My name is John Griffin. I'm a 31-year-old office worker. I have a brother who is 7 years older than me. My parents were always busy, so it was my brother, Michael, who really cared about me. Since Michael was much older than me, he always treated me as if I were precious to him, putting me first. But he wasn't just indulgent. He was also the kind of person who reprimands me when necessary. As a result, I've become quite the brother's boy. Even from my perspective as his younger brother, Michael was an exceptional person. He always had top grades and was incredibly athletic. When he taught me, he was always clear and easy to understand. Michael, you are truly amazing. John, you're pretty amazing too. You catch on quickly and have a high comprehension ability, so you remember everything in no time. Eager to live up to my admirable brother's expectations, I've been striving hard every day. As a result, I managed to land a job at my current company. By the way, it's not that I have a bad relationship with our parents. I think it's pretty typical. And the one who has always supported me is my childhood friend, Ashley. John, your calm nature is one of your strengths. Really? Do you think so? Yes, I do, and that's what I love about you. She's always been quick to notice whenever I was troubled or lacked confidence about myself, and she would say that to encourage me. Ashley has always been by my side as a childhood friend. Now, she's by my side as my wife. And now, Ashley is carrying our cherished child, and I am building a happy family together. I think the atmosphere at the company where I work is very good. Everyone is friendly and supportive, helping each other out. Whenever I have some free time, I actively offer my help. I'm truly glad to be working at this company. Instead of chatting, get back to work. Except for just one person. The moment department manager, Elizabeth, appears, the warm and friendly atmosphere turns tense. She was recently transferred to our department due to a personal change. I graduated from a prestigious university, you know. You lowly folks should just follow my orders. Elizabeth seems quite proud of her academic background, bringing it up at every opportunity. It appears she's been asking everybody about their educational background. In doing so, she seems to have concluded that she is the most highly educated among us. I'm more concerned about work performance than academic credentials, so I wish she would focus on her work instead of boasting about her educational background. What university did you graduate from? And then, she asked me about my educational background. It was a busy period, and I was already finding her troublesome. I didn't graduate the university in the States, anyway. What? Are you just a high school graduate? No way. Being a high school graduate these days means you're incompetent, aren't you? I tried to brush her off and get back to work quickly, but Elizabeth just assumed I was a high school graduate and started mocking me. I don't usually mind such things. People have different opinions, after all. Besides, Elizabeth believes that she, being a prestigious university graduate, is the most important and correct, and she doesn't need to listen to anyone with lower educational background. So, if she just looked down on me, I could ignore it, but hey you, the low-educated, finish this job by tomorrow. Wait, Elizabeth, isn't this your job? And the deadline is supposed to be next week. Since you're incompetent, all you need to do is follow my orders. It's troublesome when she dumps her work on me and harasses me like this. My colleagues helped me through it, but the atmosphere in the department had turned tense and uncomfortable. John, are you okay? You seem a bit tired. As soon as I got home, I let out a sigh, and Ashley asked me about it. She works at the same company but is currently on maternity leave and unaware of the situation at work. I wanted her to focus on preparing for the baby, but I decided to vent a little. Actually, I've been targeted by someone troublesome, and she has been dumping her work on me. That sounds tough. If you want, I'm here to listen to more details. Taking advantage of her kindness, I ended up telling her almost everything about Elizabeth. I never imagined that our conversation would be passed on to someone else. John, can we talk for a second? Sure, what's up? One day at work, my brother, Michael, called out to me. Both Michael and I had moved out of our parents' house, and since we work in different departments and hold different positions, we rarely get the chance to talk. Even though we keep in touch regularly, I was puzzled why he chose this moment to talk. I heard quite a bit from Ashley. I couldn't help but smile wryly at his words. Ashley has been my childhood friend, which has also led to her having a close relationship with my brother. There's no romantic interest between them, and I worry about nothing because Michael is deeply in love with his wife. To avoid any misunderstandings, they've made a point of not meeting without me and my sister-in-law present, and they always show me any communication they have, just to be thorough. Now, he's showing me their messages exchanged as he speaks. I think it's a bit much, though. If you need me, I'm willing to step in. It's okay. Talking to Ashley made me feel a lot better, and for now, I'd like to see how things play out. Is that so? I smiled at my concerned brother and declined his generous offer. After that, we chatted about other things before parting ways. Hey, Elizabeth. Why is someone as incompetent as you getting cozy with Michael? Out of nowhere, Elizabeth confronted me, having apparently been watching us. Is she close to my brother? Weren't they almost 10 years apart in age? You have no right to casually talk to Michael. Stay away from him from now on. I have a question. What exactly is your relationship with him? We used to be in the same department. Well, I plan to make him mine someday. At those words, I couldn't help but widen my eyes in surprise. Is she aiming to make my brother her romantic partner? With his handsome looks and excellence, he's just perfect for someone with a high education like me. You do know he's married, right? I've heard such rumors, but he doesn't wear a ring, does he? I tried to hint that he's married without saying he's my brother, but Elizabeth wouldn't believe it. Indeed, due to certain circumstances, Michael is living separately from his wife and isn't wearing a ring. So, I understand the misunderstanding, but I wish she would listen carefully to the voices around her too. Even when I tried to stop her there, she wouldn't listen, saying, "What would someone as incompetent as you know about him? Just stay away from him. You, the low-educated incompetent," refusing to hear anything else. Even if I said I was his brother, she probably wouldn't believe me, and even if she did, she'd likely say, "Then help me." After Elizabeth left, I found myself holding my head in dismay. Since then, I've been spending my days under Elizabeth's glaring watch. Moreover, her harassment intensified, leaving me wondering what to do. The current CEO is retiring, and a new CEO will be taking over. Consequently, the inauguration party is being organized. I'm attending the party too. I was among the first to receive an invitation. She seems to be over the moon, boasting about it. Basically, all employees were invited. Everyone knew it, but they kept quiet because speaking up would only cause trouble. You're jealous, aren't you? Yes, sure, I responded. Elizabeth smirked at my response. This gave me a bad feeling. For a few days following that, Elizabeth was unusually quiet, as if nothing had ever happened. Then, on the day of the party, due to some circumstances, I had to arrive at the venue early. What? There's no seat for me. After chatting with the new CEO, I tried to check my seat with the hotel staff, but the response I got was that there wasn't any. Confused, I turned around when I heard laughter behind me. Elizabeth. Ha ha ha, you look so foolish. Elizabeth pointed and laughed at me. I couldn't believe it, though. I had your seat removed, she admitted. Why, how could you? The organizer for this party is actually my uncle, so I asked him to get rid of the seat for the low-educated. I was stunned that someone would actually do such a thing. As I stood there, flustered, I noticed someone looking at us in surprise. Their shocked expression actually helped me regain my composure. There's no seat for the low-educated, so you should leave. In the center of the party venue inside a luxurious hotel. I let out a deep sigh at the words spoken there. Being looked down upon and constantly mentioned about my educational background, I had reached my limit of endurance. Maybe this was a good opportunity to set things straight. I glanced at the person behind Elizabeth, who was visibly angry. Then, I'll be leaving. Really? Well then. Elizabeth looked surprised at my easy agreement. However, that quickly changed to a triumphant expression. Then hurry up and leave, she said. I'll go even without being told. So, I left the hotel quickly, just as she wanted. Imagining what would happen next, I couldn't stop laughing. Now, I wonder what fate awaits Elizabeth, who knows nothing of this. As I was slowly enjoying my coffee, a call from Elizabeth came through on my phone. I smirked and answered the phone. From the other end, I could hear Elizabeth's panicked voice. Please, come back right now. I had no idea that you were. I couldn't help but laugh at the clearly distraught Elizabeth. Did you not expect me to be the brother of the new CEO, Mr. Griffin, and the son of the former CEO, Mr. Griffin? Indeed, the new CEO was my brother, Michael. He was also the one who had witnessed our earlier interaction. I glanced at my brother because I wanted him to stay silent until the party started. Otherwise, my brother might have ended up scolding Elizabeth right there. So, I sent him a look, asking him to keep quiet in that moment. Unfortunately for you, Elizabeth, I indeed am the son of the former CEO, Mr. Griffin. Our father, the former CEO, Mr. Griffin, is a remarkable man whom both my brother and I deeply respect. One day, we discovered that he had fallen sick. Although he didn't have to be hospitalized, he did need to make regular visits to the doctor for a while. The question arose, who would take care of him? Both my brother and I were busy with work, and our mother had recently injured her leg. It was my sister-in-law who stepped up. Being a former doctor, she moved in with our parents to care for them. Of course, we also visited them regularly, and above all, my brother frequently traveled between our parents' home and his own home. My brother didn't move in with our parents because he's busy with taking over as CEO, often coming home late at night, so he frequently returns to his own place, which is closer to the office. For these reasons, it currently feels as though they are living separately. Additionally, my brother has a metal allergy, which is why he doesn't wear a ring. This isn't a secret. Most executives are aware, so it's not something we openly declare. Most of the executives knew I was part of the Griffin family, so I never felt the need to mention it to Elizabeth specifically. Really? Well, you probably wouldn't have listened to me anyway. This party was not only to celebrate my brother officially becoming CEO, but also to announce our father's recovery and to introduce my sister-in-law as his wife to the entire company. And there, I was to be introduced as his brother and also to be introduced as someone who would become his right-hand man in the future. However, Elizabeth's action of sending me away disrupted the plans, turning the event into an opportunity to reprimand her instead. While on the phone with Elizabeth, I opened a messaging app and saw a message from my brother, "Come back." So, I stood up and left the cafe. In fact, I didn't go back home. Instead, I waited while having coffee at a nearby coffee shop. This allowed me to return to the venue quickly. Sorry to keep you waiting." As I entered, all eyes turned to me. While receiving such gazes, I headed towards where my brother and the others were. "Well, you must have hard time, John." There was my brother, smiling broadly, and Elizabeth, looking like she might cry. Seeing me, Elizabeth immediately began to apologize profusely. "I'm truly sorry. I can't accept your apology. I won't forgive you." Without looking at Elizabeth, I responded and smiled at my brother and the others. "Sorry for the trouble. Don't worry about it." My brother easily forgave me as I apologized. Then, he pointed at Elizabeth. It seemed he was giving me the chance to fight back against her before he enacts any punishment. I nodded with a smile and turned back to Elizabeth. "I'm not forgiving you because of the disrespect you showed to Griffin's family, but for what you did to me personally. I'm so sorry." "You're only apologizing because I'm part of the Griffin family, right? If I were the low-educated incompetent you mentioned, you wouldn't apologize, would you?" Upon hearing that, Elizabeth's face turned pale. "Oh, there was it. I need to make sure to correct that part as well. By the way, I'm not a high school graduate." "What?" "I graduated from high school in the States, but went abroad for university." "Abroad? I haven't heard that from you before." "Didn't I say I didn't graduate from university in the States?" Elizabeth's eyes widened at my words. "I'm not as exceptional as my brother, but I'm fairly accomplished in my own right. That's why I went abroad right after graduating from high school." "Well, I don't go around bragging about my educational background like some people do. Such the low-educated incompetent, what would they? If I'm the low-educated incompetent, I wonder how excellent you must be." At that question, Elizabeth fell silent. Then, my brother stepped forward. "We will consider the consequences of this incident carefully." At his words, Elizabeth's shoulders slumped in defeat. "John, will you stay for the party?" "No, I'll be going home. I want to see my wife." I had planned to leave early after a brief introduction. After all, my pregnant wife, Ashley, was waiting for me at home, so I wanted to see her as soon as possible. Understanding this, my brother gave a wry smile, but this time I went home on my own accord. "Hi honey, how was your day? You could have stayed a bit longer and enjoyed the party." "The party is nothing compared to how important Ashley is to me." My beloved wife was waiting for me at home, and the thought brought a genuine smile to my face. I began to harbor special feelings for Ashley during our high school days. Back then, I was deeply troubled. Though I now hold nothing but respect, I felt a terrible inferiority complex towards my family members. My brother was outstanding since our school days, and our father was the CEO, while our mother originally serving as his secretary. Born into such an elite family, I felt almost crushed by the pressure. "I have nothing." "That's not true. You're amazing in your own way." "My grades aren't even close to my brother's, and I've never been recognized in sports." "You and your brother are different. Besides, you have something unique that only you possess." I had no confidence, feeling as though I had nothing to offer and that those around me looked down on me. Of course, no one had actually said that to me. My family, especially my brother, made time for me despite their busy schedules, but as an adolescent, I wasn't able to fully appreciate it. Ashley was the one who comforted and supported me through those times. She, who always had kind words for me, gradually became a special presence in my life. "Thank you for everything, Ashley." "It's nothing. I just can't leave you alone." Saying so, she supported me through countless times when I was on the verge of giving up. I've always struggled with expressing anger. Getting angry was exhausting, and avoiding confrontation seemed much easier. Because of my nature, I was often underestimated and entangled by others, leveraging my status as the CEO's son. If anyone messes with John, they'll have to deal with me. Ashley would stand up for me, driving those troublemakers away. Even if it meant getting hurt, she stayed by my side. I wanted to protect her, who has been so supportive. With that thought, I resolved to become stronger both mentally and physically, and accepted the offer to study abroad that my father had proposed. "Aren't you going to tell Ashley?" "No, and don't you say anything unnecessary, okay?" I left for overseas without telling Ashley anything. If she had found someone else by the time I returned, I decided I would give up. With that thought, I graduated successfully and was greeted at the airport by Ashley and my brother. "Welcome back, John." After she said that, I confessed my love to her, and we began dating. Eventually, we got married, and now she's carrying our first child. "Hey, Ashley, thanks for everything." "What are you suddenly talking about?" "You talked to my brother, right? That's how I was able to fight back, so." "Of course, you've been special to me since we were kids. I can forgive anyone who hurts you," Ashley said with a smile. "I still have a lot to learn, it seems. To be protected by the person I wish to protect, how ironic. In return, make sure both our child and I are exceptionally happy, okay?" "Of course, I will." I firmly promised to make a happy life for Ashley and our future together. The next day at work, Elizabeth was nowhere to be seen. I learned from my brother about Elizabeth's circumstances. She was indeed transferred to our department due to a personnel change, but in reality, she was moved here because she had caused problems elsewhere. The issue was her stalking behavior towards my brother. It came to light through reports from my brother and others around him, and under normal circumstances, termination would have been considered. But unfortunately, my father's illness was discovered around the same time. Due to the sudden need to undertake the handover process, the matter was overlooked, and in the meantime, Max, the executive vice president, and her uncle, covered it up. The matter was settled with just a departmental transfer. "You should have told me. I didn't want to worry you. You've always been gentle, not the type to lash out, but you worry enough to make yourself sick." That's irrelevant now, isn't it? I'm known for being too gentle and mild-mannered, according to those around me. Just because I don't get angry easily, doesn't mean I think I'm too gentle. So, what happened to Elizabeth and Max, the executive vice president? Both of them are currently suspended. Well, consider it a brief respite. My brother is very capable, but perhaps because of that, he shows no mercy. Anyone who has angered him in the past has faced severe consequences. I thought about Elizabeth's future. As a result, Elizabeth and Max were transferred to a newly established branch, effectively a demotion in disguise. The location is a remote island with surveillance, making escape impossible. However, the primary task is sorting emails that come from the main office. Beyond that, there's basically no work or entertainment. However, they had to work as a form of compensation for the trouble they caused us. I wonder how much stress they're under now. With those thoughts in mind, I get on with my own work. Due to this incident, I was appointed as the department head, an unusual promotion. Fortunately, since Elizabeth had already been delegating her work to me, I was able to take over without any issues. Keep up the good work and climb the ladder. You're going to be my right-hand man someday. To live up to my brother's expectations, I'm continually working on improving myself. Years later, we now have 2 children. My brother doesn't have any kids, but he dotes on ours. Pursue the path you love. You don't have to force yourself to go to college, and on the other hand, it's okay to study abroad. But never forget to be considerate of others. Education doesn't determine everything. make sure to see people for who they truly are. That's what we teach our children. I don't know what paths they'll take in the future, and they might struggle like I did. Even so, I'm determined to protect them together with Ashley. Please, marry my daughter, my father-in-law implored. I was so taken aback by his words that my mind went blank. Har Mary, you mean me and your daughter Emily? Emily is my ex-wife's sister. She's probably just graduated from college. When I met Emily, she was still in middle or high school, and I remember fondly how much I adored her. The thought of me marrying Emily, it's just inconceivable. After all, regardless of who it is, I have no intention of falling in love or marrying again. I'm sorry, but I can't do that. Besides, I have no plans to marry again. I intend to live alone for the rest of my life. I said this and showed my respect. Then my father-in-law made an even more surprising statement. That's even better then. Our interests align perfectly. What do you mean? I'm John. 3 years ago, I lost my beloved wife, Laura. She passed away only 2 years after we got married. When my wife started feeling unwell and we went to the hospital, she was suddenly given only a year to live. Laura endured painful treatments and fought bravely. She held on 18 days longer than her prognosis, but unfortunately, she passed away. At the time, both Laura and I were just 30 years old, and we naturally imagined a happy future with children and a loving family. But all that was lost, and I couldn't harbor any hope for the future. Without Laura, I couldn't imagine a happy life. That's why I thought so. So, of course, I don't want children anymore, nor do I intend to engage in love or marriage. I live a modest life alone, hoping to reunite with Laura in the afterlife and finally live together. I've never been religious, but I find comfort in such thoughts. Then, 3 years later, about a week after Laura's death anniversary, I hadn't seen my in-laws much since Laura's funeral and sorting out her belongings, but they contacted me after a long time. It's been 3 years since she passed. Without thinking deeply, I went to Laura's parents' house as invited. Laura's father is the CEO of a large corporation. Laura was the daughter of the CEO, and she worked at her father's company. I joined the company as a recent graduate and met Laura there. I'm not ambitious, so I never thought about promotions or climbing the corporate ladder. I was surprised to learn after dating that Laura was the CEO's daughter. Her father liked me and even talked about me being the next CEO. But after Laura passed away, I knew I wasn't the one to take over, so I resigned from the company. It was a bit awkward meeting them again after all this time. However, what Laura's father said at their house was completely unexpected. Please, marry Emily. I was so surprised that I went blank. Huh? Marry Emily? Me? Emily is Laura's sister. She must have just graduated from college or something. When Laura was alive, Emily was still in middle and high school, and I remember how fondly I adored her. The thought of marrying Emily, it's just inconceivable. Regardless of who the other person is, I have no intention of falling in love or marrying again. Yet, the idea of marrying my late wife's sister is bizarre to anyone. Still, for my in-laws to make such a request, there must be a significant reason behind it. But I can't agree to it. I understand there might be circumstances, but I'm sorry, I can't do it. I haven't thought about marrying anyone other than Laura. I plan to live alone for the rest of my life. I said this and showed my respect. Then, my father-in-law made another surprising statement. That's even better. Our interests align perfectly. What do you mean? I was completely lost by the true meaning of his words, so I asked again. He then suggested, can I call Emily herself? I was confused, but I agreed. When my father-in-law called for Emily, she quietly entered, probably from the next room. She sat down in the chair next to her father, across from me. I've seen Laura and Emily get along many times, but I can't say I'm close to Emily myself. We've only had a few one-on-one conversations, and I thought Emily would be in trouble if she asked me to marry her. I'm really sorry for this sudden request, but Emily insisted. I was shocked again when my father-in-law said that. What? Emily did. I became even more confused. Seeing my confusion, my father-in-law said, "You guys talk about this together," and left the room. There was a moment of silence, and then Emily said, "I'm really sorry for suddenly making such a rude request. I think the last time we met, she was still a student." I was relieved to see she hadn't changed much from her humble and polite demeanor back then, despite such an absurd request. "Well, yes." Unsure of how to respond, I replied hesitantly, and Emily began to explain the situation. "I have a fiancé, but he was someone my father chose for me." I thought such situations only existed in dramas. Being the daughter of a big company CEO must be tough. My father loved my bright, kind, and intelligent sister Laura, and he always said he wanted you to take over the company. Losing both of them, I think he's desperate for an heir. Laura and Emily had no brothers. I guess the company really is in trouble with the successor issue. That's why he wants to marry me off quickly and prepare the next heir, but I don't want to get married. Not ever. Emily's eyes showed a strong resolve, clearly indicating her aversion to marriage. It felt intrusive to ask why she didn't want to marry, so I asked what concerned me most. "Then why do you want to marry me?" She didn't seem to have any affection for me. Emily hesitated before looking me in the eye and saying, "I thought everything would be neatly resolved with you. It's selfish of me. I don't want to marry, but I have to for my father. But I don't want to be in a romantic relationship. Initially, I thought it impossible to find someone who felt the same about marriage and love. But then I remembered you said the same at my sister's funeral. That's why I'm making this selfish request. I'm sorry." I finally understood why I was being asked such an absurd thing. Of course, I don't intend to have a marital relationship or children. If you join my father's company, you could become the next CEO, and the compensation would be substantial. I'll try to meet any questions or demands you have, so please consider it. Emily said this. Aside from the fact of becoming my sister-in-law's husband, there was no particular reason for me to refuse. I'm not passionate about my current job, so working for my father-in-law, who needs me, seems like a way to be useful to someone. I have no siblings, and my parents have already passed away, so entering or leaving a family register wouldn't affect anyone. The most important fact is Emily's desperation, to the point of proposing such an unusual solution. If my marriage can help resolve this situation, it might be worth considering. However, the problem is that she is Laura's sister. Even though there are circumstances, I wonder what Laura would think if she knew I married Emily and lived with her. Even if it's not a romantic relationship, it might not sit well with her. Of course, Laura has passed away and wouldn't know, but I still didn't want to do anything that might sadden her or make me unable to face her, even if it seemed minor. What should I do? My own feelings are strong, but Emily's desperate plea is also reaching me. That's why I couldn't respond immediately, creating an awkward silence. Then, Emily stood up with her eyes filled with tears. "I know it's not something I should ask of my sister's husband, but please, I'm begging you." Although I couldn't see her face, I could tell she was crying just by her voice and trembling shoulders. At that moment, I suddenly remembered seeing a similar scene in the past. Back then, still in her school uniform and quite innocent, Emily would cry so much she couldn't speak, and Laura would embrace and comfort her several times. It's okay. I love you no matter what, Emily. I'm always on your side." Laura's words would change Emily's expression. And then, always with a smile, she would say, "Thank you, sis," and leave. Remembering this, I finally made up my mind. If Laura could see us now, I felt like she would say, "I'm fine, so please take care of Emily." "I understand. I'll accept it." Hearing my words, Emily expressed her gratitude many times. And so, I ended up living a married life with my deceased wife's sister, Emily. But in reality, it was nothing like a marriage. We would eat separately, do our own laundry and dishes. We set up rotation for cleaning the common areas, and since we both worked, there was no financial interference. It was more like sharing a room with a stranger, so we made thorough rules. "Thank you for accepting my proposal." On her first day at our house, Emily said politely. Then she went straight to Laura's altar and prayed for a long time. This was the house Laura and I lived in. The thought of living with Emily, whom Laura adored, made me wonder what Laura would think. That day, it took so long to move in and organize Emily's belongings that before we knew it, it was night. "I'm going to the convenience store since we don't have much. Do you want me to buy anything?" I asked Emily as she was organizing her room. Suddenly surprised by my question, Emily seemed to accidentally bump her arm into the shelf. "Are you okay?" When I asked in surprise, she said, "I'm fine, sorry. Could you please get pasta for me?" Emily replied. Such casual conversations had ceased completely since Laura passed away. It was a bittersweet feeling, missing Laura and feeling lonely with someone who wasn't her. I decided to eat in the living room after returning from the convenience store. It was awkward, as we had hardly ever talked one-on-one. But avoiding each other by eating in separate bedrooms felt too blatant and disrespectful. While absent-mindedly eating my ready meal, I noticed what looked like a bruise on Emily's arm. "Is that from when you hurt yourself earlier? Are you sure you don't need to ice it?" Upon hearing my words, Emily quickly covered her arm with her sleeve. I felt something was off but didn't think much of it at the time. Was it insensitive of me to bring up the bruise on a woman? I thought, deciding not to mention it again. However, Emily's puzzling behavior continued. When Emily tried to do the dishes after dinner, I suggested, "I'll take care of it, you can continue with your room." As I turned around to switch places, Emily quickly covered her neck and turned towards me abruptly. Her expression seemed panicked and angry, so I involuntarily said, I'm sorry." I reflected on whether my sudden approach had startled her. I thought I had maintained a proper distance, but I'm the one who should apologize. "Thank you for dishes," Emily said quickly, and then rushed to her room. By this point, I already had a vague sense of unease, and that turned into certainty just before going to bed, after finishing my bath. My bedroom is right before the bathroom, so I could have gone straight to bed, but I thought it would be rude not to say anything, so I headed to the living room where Emily was. Emily was praying at Laura's altar, and seeing her devotion made me feel a bit warmer, thinking about the close bond between the sisters. As she finished praying and I was about to tell her I was going to bed, I noticed a suspicious bruise on the back of her neck from a distance. It looked like a mark left by something tightly wrapped around it. After observing her behavior throughout the day, I had a gut feeling that I couldn't just leave it be and asked, "What happened to that bruise?" I knew she might not like it, but I asked anyway. Emily turned around surprised and then tried to evade the question. This is..." Emily struggled to find her words. Sensing she had a difficult situation to discuss, I patiently waited for her next words, which came sooner than expected. "I can't believe you agreed to marry me. Listening to such a huge selfish request, I can't keep secrets from you." Then Emily rolled up her sleeve to reveal her arm. And I was shocked at what I saw. Her arm was covered in bruises of various shapes and ages. I was abused by the person I was dating. Being hit, burnt. It was a daily occurrence, and I became numb to it. I knew I had to leave, but I couldn't because I loved him. I grew to hate myself more and more for being so weak. It pained me to hear Emily speak so painfully. And then I realized why she was so scared when I went behind her. It reminded her of her traumatic experiences. But I was dumbfounded when he dumped me so abruptly, saying he'd found someone else he liked. I endured so much pain just because I didn't want to be hated by him, yet to be let go so easily was a shock. More than anything, I was surprised by how sad I felt about the breakup, even though the days had been so tough. The range of negative emotions on her face was palpable: sadness, frustration, fear. It pained my heart to see her like this, so different from the smiling face she used to show Laura. Since then, I've tried to start new relationships for friends' introductions, but I developed a fear of men. Even a slight touch from a bump made me tremble with fear, and just talking to them would set my heart racing. I used to dream of a normal life, getting married, having kids, but now I realize those dreams might never come true. I learned the hard way that the scars of abuse are lifelong issues, something I wish I'd realized sooner. And then, as if oblivious to her condition, my father-in-law-to-be announced our engagement. The thought of marriage was impossible for her with her fear of men. Indeed, in this situation, it would be unfair to the person she'd marry. Emily, desperate to avoid marriage, thought of me since I knew her from before and wouldn't demand a romantic relationship, given her condition. Plus, it would please her father. That's how she came to the idea of marrying me. I'm so sorry for involving you in my selfishness. My sister might even be angry. What am I doing? Emily broke down, all her pent-up emotions collapsing. She cried endlessly, tears flowing one after the other, words unable to capture her pain. It was reminiscent of the times when Laura was there, but now there's no Laura to comfort and reassure her. But I'm still here, just like back then. I may not be able to replace Laura, but I can carry on her legacy. Laura would definitely not be angry. She always said she wanted to be on your side no matter what. I'm sure Laura still wishes for your happiness more than anyone else. It's true that Laura isn't here anymore, but her love for you hasn't disappeared. So, let's calm down and really think about what will make you happy. Emily nodded through her tears as I spoke. Then, after she had calmed down, I made a confession. First of all, I haven't registered our marriage yet. I showed her paperwork for the marriage, filled out and meant to be registered today. There was no rush, so I decided to bring it back home to make sure this was really what she wanted. Emily was surprised, but I now think it was for the best. The wounds in your heart are immeasurable. Healing them might not be easy, but as long as you still have the true desire to someday marry someone you love and have children, I want to honor that wish. I'll do anything to support you, as your brother-in-law. Perhaps her true feelings had been buried under fear, haste, and consideration for her parents. But Emily's true hope was indeed here. Jess, thank you so much. Emily said this, tears welling up again. Thus, Emily and I managed to avoid getting married at the last minute and started living new days. Of course, we stopped living together. We explained the situation to her parents, they understood, and Emily began visiting a clinic for mental health care. Although legally my marital relationship with the late Laura had ended, the familial ties still existed. So, with her father's wish, I officially took on the role as the heir, being the husband of Laura. My stance of not marrying anyone but Laura hasn't changed, but now I have caring in-laws and a sister-in-law, even though we're not related by blood. This alone has made me feel that I'm not living a life alone. At first, I thought marrying my late wife's sister was an absurd suggestion, but it's thanks to that proposal that I have this life now. Looking back, I think that it must have meant something. That's how I feel about it now. If Laura were looking down on us, I bet she'd say the same thing. After graduating from college, I landed a job. I was fortunate to find a good company during these times, and at that workplace, I met a woman I wanted to spend my life with. My life was going smoothly. However, those days unexpectedly changed. My name is Michael. I'm a salesman at a trading company that specializes in product sales. The company I work for is well known locally, and after graduating from college, I was employed there because of the work I had done during my university days. Michael, could you take care of this, too? Isn't that your job? I've got plans today, so as a senior's request, I'll leave it to you. See you. With that, Sarah waved her hand and left. She was a woman in the sales department where I was assigned, often leaving work for me, the newcomer, and heading out. I didn't particularly mind since I was often given tasks like this even in university. Above all, I reminded myself that it was a time to gain experience and worked hard. In my job, I deal with specialized equipment and devices. Therefore, more expertise is required than in other sales jobs. Using the knowledge and experience I gained in university, I would visit clients who patronized our trading company, building a track record through direct sales. In the sales department, there was a senior female colleague whom I admired. Emily, you always look so cool. Cut the flattery and get back to work, Sarah. Emily, the only woman who could scold Sarah, who was popular among men in the department for being cute. She was 2 years my senior, not intimidated by handling specialized equipment in sales, and boasted the top sales performance among the female staff. Half a year after joining the company, I was assigned to work under her. Michael, let's go. Yes, ma'am. I assisted Emily, who mainly did outside sales, traveling from west to east on business trips. Initially, I thought Emily was a daunting woman. Michael, the document is wrong again. Sorry. Be careful, it's for the clients. Yes, ma'am. She was strict and didn't overlook mistakes. She was meticulous in her work, saying, Michael, we're going to run from here. Carry the luggage. When we get stuck in traffic and we're late for a meeting with a client. What? Run. Just hurry up. Yes, ma'am. Such were the scenarios that showed her dedication to work. But her knowledge, experience, passion for the products, and the smile she showed when facing clients were incredibly beautiful, and I followed her, admiring Emily. Michael, the presentation just now was good, wasn't it? Really. I thought it was my best work. Here, I'll treat you to coffee. Let's wrap up this deal in one go. Yes, ma'am. As I became more familiar with the job, understanding the client's preferences and values, and what was acceptable or not, Emily, who used to scold me, started praising me. The smile she showed at those times gradually transformed my admiration into a faint love. However, Emily, beautiful and helpful to everyone in her work, was extremely popular. Lucky you, Michael, getting to work directly under Emily. Everyone's got their eye on her, you know. My colleague, Brandon, who joined the company at the same time as me, kept repeating this during our lunch breaks. There were a few others in our batch, and all of them admired Emily. Being her direct subordinate, I felt completely out of place, a newbie like me. Then one day, "Are you free tonight?" As we reached the nearest station to our client's location after work, Emily asked me that. Today was Friday. Since our client was in the neighboring county to where our company was located, we were supposed to head straight home after our business meeting today. I was flustered by Emily's sudden invitation, but to her, I was just a subordinate. Telling myself she was just inviting me for a casual drink after work, I accepted her invitation. We had some light drinks and snacks at a bar near the station, then moved to a second location. That's when the incident happened. Michael, you've been doing really well lately. To my surprise, Emily got completely drunk. She had always seemed strong with alcohol at company drinking parties, but today, she was drinking at a fast pace and choosing stronger drinks. And by the time we reached the second bar, she was totally inebriated. I was looking for a place nearby where Emily could rest, but when she recovered a bit, she pointed to a place. It was a hotel. Emily, it's good to take a break there. But it's a hotel. Just go," Emily said in a tone I had never heard before. Overwhelmed by her aura, I followed her to the hotel she pointed to. From there, it was adult time. But no, as soon as Emily collapsed on the bed, she fell asleep, and I, too overwhelmed by the situation, relaxed and spent the night on the sofa. The next day, Emily and I left the hotel feeling awkward and went home, but that incident brought us closer. 3 months after that event, Emily and I started dating. From a professional admiration to a love I held, I was smitten with her. We spent a lot of time together at work, and when we went on business trips out of the county, we stayed in the same hotel and enjoyed visiting little tourist spots after work. 2 years after I joined a company, Emily and I got married. My colleagues, led by Brandon from the same year I joined, enviously congratulated us at our wedding, saying, "You're so lucky." But after we got married, Emily's attitude became noticeably different. Once we started living together, I realized she often treated me like a child. "Can't you even understand that? That's not good." She would complain, and even if I did the laundry or cleaned, she rarely thanked me but often criticized. Emily never slacked off on household chores. Everything she did was meticulous, and I, who was a bit messy in my personal life, felt suffocated in our married life. Then one day, my boss David, who had been on an overseas assignment, returned to my department. David, who went abroad just as I joined 2 years ago, had the impression of being capable but having a bad personality. He quickly made moves on Sarah, the cute girl in our department, and before we knew it, rumors were flying around that they were dating. But since he was good at his job, no one could complain even seeing him getting along with Sarah in the office. One day, while I was sorting through a mountain of documents as Emily was out on her own, David called me over. "You've married a tough woman, huh?" After some small talk at my desk, David said that to me. I was irritated, thinking he was insulting my wife, but his next words felt like a bucket of cold water over my head. "That woman has always had a bad history with men. Be careful, okay?" I couldn't believe it. I had thought Emily was popular but sincere. But David said, "You, being new, wouldn't know about her past," and told me she had caused trouble with men in the company before. After parting from David, I kept telling myself that couldn't be true. She couldn't be that kind of person. However, her attitude at home only accelerated my anxiety. I couldn't figure out what she really thought of me, always treating me like a child. Around that time, I was removed from being Emily's subordinate. It came out of nowhere, and when I asked David, my boss, who informed me about it, he said with a somewhat reluctant face, "Emily said it's difficult to work with you, so she asked to change her subordinate." Everything went dark before my eyes. True, at home I had been scolded, criticized, and talked down to by Emily numerous times, but at work, I thought I was supporting her without any mistakes. Indeed, Emily had never complained about my work, and she even praised me for my recent presentation at a business meeting. Why? That was the only question in my mind. David then told me, "You're in your 2nd year now, so you need to grow and be able to work independently." So, I started working on my own for a while. When I got home that day, Emily, with a sullen look, said to me, "Don't you have anything to say to me?" Hearing those words, I felt like something inside me was breaking. Trying to hide my turmoil, I told her there was nothing in particular, and she just said, "I see," and went to her room. From then on, Emily and I began to drift apart. With a new subordinate, Emily's overtime increased, and the time we used to go home together changed significantly. Thinking she must be tired, I would cook and wait for her, but as soon as she got home, she would complain, "You haven't cleaned up the dishes," and point out where I hadn't washed properly or left dirt. At work, I saw less of her, and at home, the atmosphere was awkward, making me feel quite down. During those days, I heard something from Tyler, a colleague in the same sales department. He mentioned that Emily and David, our boss, used to be in a relationship. I shrugged it off at the time, but on my way home from work, I vividly remembered Tyler's trivial story. As I approached the busy downtown area on my way home, I saw something. Emily was walking side by side with David in the downtown area, just the two of them. Seeing them walk together, my mind went blank. That scene etched in my mind, and something inside me that had been barely holding on shattered. I don't remember how I got home. When I realized it, I was at home, sitting blankly on the sofa. My head was a mess, and the image of Emily and David walking together kept flashing back, making me cry and rush to the bathroom to throw up. For the next few days, I thought a lot, but couldn't find an answer. Maybe my heart was tired from the days of drifting apart from Emily. On my next day off, I made up my mind. Emily was working, and it was just my day off. I thought it was a convenient timing and acted on it. At 10 p.m., Emily came home. I was waiting in the living room, and as soon as she entered, I blurted out, "You were with David today, weren't you?" As soon as David's name was mentioned, Emily was lost for words and froze. Her expression seemed to say, "How did you know?" Seeing her face, I couldn't bear it anymore. "I've filled out my part." With those words, I left a green piece of paper on the living room table. It was a divorce oath, but only my signature. At that moment, Emily was saying something, but I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to see the woman I admired and loved making excuses. I grabbed my few packed belongings and rushed out of the house. I ran towards the station for a while. Looking back, Emily wasn't following me. That only fueled my despair further. All I could think of was that I didn't want to go home that night. I found myself dejected, standing alone in the station's rotary. Then, someone placed a hand on my shoulder. "Hey, Michael, what are you doing here?" When I looked up, there was Brandon, my colleague from the same year I joined. Brandon, on his way home from work, found me sitting alone at the rotary and, concerned, came over to talk to me. Seeing Brandon's serious look, usually so laid back, I embarrassingly broke down in tears in front of him. After I cried for a while, Brandon, realizing this was no small matter, said, "Come stay at my place tonight," and put me into a taxi. The taxi ride took about 10 minutes to reach Brandon's apartment, where he lives alone. After preparing a simple dinner, Brandon handed me a beer and asked what had happened. A bit calmed by the alcohol, I told him everything, and Brandon, after thinking for a moment, said with a kind smile, "For now, I'll take care of things tomorrow, so you just rest." Just like he did at the rotary, Brandon patted my shoulder and prepared a bed for me, saying, "Go to bed and relax." I felt Brandon was like a different person from his usual self at that moment. The next day, I called in sick and stayed at Brandon's place. Brandon was up early, preparing something, and only said I could do as I pleased at home before he left. In the afternoon, I remembered my phone. When I took it out of my bag, it was filled with missed calls and texts from Emily. I was hesitant to look, but I noticed that the history stopped abruptly that morning. As I was thinking that Emily must be meeting with David at work, coordinating their stories like my husband found out, my phone in hand vibrated slightly. Surprised, I looked at the screen to find a text from Emily. "Are you free tonight?" It was the same line she used when she first invited me out for drinks. I wasn't sure if it was nostalgia or a desire to settle things with Emily, but I felt the urge to meet her. We agreed to meet at the station after her work, as she would finish on time. I was still in the disheveled clothes I had left home in. As I headed to the meeting station, Emily spotted me and immediately rushed over. Her face looked worried and relieved to see me. Unsure what to say, I was pondering when Emily apologized. "I'm sorry. Seeing her continue to apologize, I was at a loss for what to do. As I stood dumbfounded, I heard a voice from the station, "Hey." Looking in the direction of the voice, there was Brandon, walking towards us with his usual nonchalant expression. "Don't worry, Michael, your wife isn't cheating on you." I was even more stunned. How could Brandon be so sure? My confusion must have shown because Brandon explained the truth. Emily hadn't been cheating with David. While it was true they had dated in the past, Emily had broken up with him due to his possessiveness. With David being assigned overseas around that time, he had left, not accepting the breakup. Emily had focused on her work, and their relationship was supposed to have ended. However, David had never accepted their breakup. When he returned to America and found out Emily was dating me, he used his authority as a supervisor to falsely report and remove me as Emily's subordinate, involving her in his work. The rumors that Emily has a bad history with men spread by David were meant to break us up. Emily herself was also misled when I was removed from being her subordinate. David had lied to her, saying, "Michael seems fed up with your methods," suggesting mutual dissatisfaction to justify the change in our working relationship. But why did Brandon know all this? When I asked, Brandon answered with a proud look, "Because I'm in HR." When I expressed my surprise, as I had never heard this before, Brandon nonchalantly apologized, saying he had kept it a secret. Brandon had been transferred to HR, tasked with internal investigations into misconduct and attitudes towards work across various departments. He had been monitoring for harassment, such as power abuse and sexual harassment, by supervisors. David's actions had been suspicious for a while, and his return from overseas was partly to gloss over troubles with interpersonal relationships there. Brandon then informed me that HR was currently dealing firmly with David and left us. Left alone were Emily and I. Realizing how I had been misled by my assumptions and manipulated by David, I knew I had to apologize to Emily. "I'm sorry, Emily. If we had talked more properly, this wouldn't have happened. It's partly my fault too. I was pushing you too hard," Emily said. She seemed to realize that her behavior at home had been wrong. Her treatment of me as a child stemmed from her inexperience in dating a younger man. She didn't know how to interact properly. Whenever she tried to act more mature, it backfired. While she appreciated my attempts to help and support her, she often pointed out my shortcomings and struggled to be honest. Emily apologized. Then, Emily and I had dinner together anew. Of course, it was at the home we shared. When we returned home after shopping for dinner, our awkwardness made us laugh just by looking at each other. The next day, when Emily and I went to work together, the situation had surprisingly settled down. Apparently, David had been suspended due to the trouble he caused overseas and his recent abuse of power. Soon, an official report would be released by HR, demoting him and reassigning him to a regional branch, Brandon nonchalantly mentioned while eating lunch. David had also been spectacularly dumped by Sarah and was now working quietly alone in a regional office. Brandon's role in resolving this issue was recognized, and since he had originally expressed a desire to gain experience through an overseas assignment, he was promoted to the branch where David had been stationed. "I'll do my best abroad as a single man, so you make sure to keep your wife happy," Brandon said with his usual charm, waving goodbye as he left for his overseas journey. Emily and I are cherishing our time together anew. We're increasing the time we spend together, making up for the time we missed, and Emily is trying hard to avoid treating me like a child. We're doing housework together. She praises and supports me where I do well, and we're experimenting with various ways to improve our time together. Our work is also going well, and we're now stepping forward to build happiness together, truly understanding each other's hearts.